Clary was tall and solid, with big hands and knobby knuckles. She had a square jaw and square shoulders and brown hair cut in a short, squarish way. You might have thought from looking at her that she was a gruff, unfriendly person, but her nature was just the opposite. She was more comfortable with plants than with people. Lina's father had always said she was strong but shy, a person of much knowledge but few words. Lina had always liked her. Even when she was little, Clary did not treat her like a baby, but gave her jobs to do, pulling up carrots, picking bugs off cabbages. And since her parents had died, Lina had come many times to talk to Clary, or just to work silently beside her. Clary was always kind to her, and working with plants took Lina's mind off her grief. "Well," said Clary. She smiled at Lina, wiped her hands off on her already grimy pants, and smiled some more. Finally, she said, "You're a messenger." "Yes," said Lina, "and I have a message for you. It's from Arbon Swin. Please add 4 extra crates to my order. 2 of potatoes, 2 of cabbages." Clary frowned. "I can't do that," she said. "At least I can send him the cabbages, but only 1 small crate of potatoes." "Why?" asked Lina. "Well, we sort of have a problem with the potatoes." "What is it?" asked Lina. Clary had a habit of answering questions in the briefest way possible. You had to keep asking and asking before she would believe you really wanted to know and weren't just being polite. Then she would explain, and you could see how much she knew and how much she loved her work. "I'll show you," she said. She led the way to a bed where the green leaves were spotted with black. "A new disease. I haven't seen it before. When you dig up the potatoes, they're runny inside instead of hard, and they stink. I'm going to have to throw out all of these in this bed, and there are only a few beds left that aren't infected." Most people in Ember had potatoes at every meal, mashed, boiled, stewed, roasted. They had fried potatoes too in the days before the cooking oil ran out. "I'd hate it if we couldn't have potatoes anymore," Lina said. "I would too," said Clary. They sat on the edge of the potato bed and talked for a while. About Lina's grandmother and the baby, and about the trouble Clary was having with the beehives, and about the greenhouse's sprinkler system. "That hasn't worked right since," Clary hesitated and glanced sideways at Lina, "for a long time." She didn't want to say, "since your father died." Lina understood that. She stood. "I should go," she said. "I have to take Arbon Swin the answer to the message." "I'll hope you come again," said Clary. "You can come whenever. You can come anytime." Lina said thank you and turned to go. But just outside the greenhouse door, she heard running footsteps and a strange high sobbing sound. Or rather, she heard the sobs, and then a wail, sobs, and then a shout, and then more sobs getting louder. She looked back towards the rear of the greenhouses, toward the trash heaps. "Clary," she called, "there's something." Clary came out too and listened. "Do you hear it?" "Yes," said Clary. She frowned. "I'm afraid it's someone who..." She peered towards the crying noise. "Yes, here he comes." Her strong hand gripped Lina's shoulder for a moment. "You better go," she said. "I'll take care of this." "But what is it?" "Never mind. Just go on." Lina wanted to see. Once Clary had walked away, she ducked behind the tool shed, and from there she watched. The noise came closer. Out beyond the trash heaps, a figure appeared. It was a man, running and stumbling, his arms flopping. He looked as if he was about to fall over, and he could hardly pick up his feet. In fact, as he came closer, he did fall. He tripped over a hose and crumpled to the ground as if his bones had dissolved. Clary stooped down and said something to him in a voice too low for Lina to hear. The man was panting. When he turned over and sat up, Lina saw that his face was scratched and his eyes wide open in fear. His sobs had turned into hiccups. She recognized him. It was Sage Merrill, one of the clerks at the supply depot. He was a quiet, long-faced man who always looked worried. Clary helped him to his feet. The two of them came slowly toward the greenhouse, and as they got closer, Lina could hear what the man was saying. He spoke very fast in a weak, trembly voice, hardly stopping for breath. "Was sure I could do it. I said to myself, just one step after another, that's all, just one after another. I knew it would be dark. Who doesn't know that? But I thought, Well, dark can't hurt you. I'll just keep going, I thought. He stumbled and sagged against Clary. Careful, said Clary. They reached the door of the greenhouse, and Clary struggled to open it. Without thinking, Lina darted out from behind the tool shed and opened it for her. Clary shot her a quick frown, but said nothing. Sage didn't stop talking. But then the farther I went into the darkness, the darker it was. You can't just keep walking into black dark, can you? It was like a wall in front of you. I kept turning around to look at the lights of the city because that's all there was to see. And then I'd say to myself, don't look back, keep moving. But I kept tripping and falling. The ground is rough out there. I scraped my hands. He held up one of his hands and stared at the red scratches on it, which oozed drops of blood. They got him into Clary's office and sat him down in her chair, and he rambled on. Be brave, I said to myself. I kept going, and then all of a sudden I thought, anything could be out here. There could be a pit 1,000 feet deep right in front of me. There could be something that bites. I've heard stories, rats as big as garbage bins, and I had to get out of there. I turned around and I ran. Never mind, said Clary. You're all right now. Lina, get him some water. Lina found a cup and filled it from the sink in the corner. Sage took it with a shaking hand and drank it down. What are you looking for? Said Lina. She knew what she would have been looking for if she had gone out there. She thought about it countless times. Sage stared at her. He seemed to have a puzzle over her question, and finally he said, I was looking for something that could help us. What would it be? I don't know, like a stairway that leads somewhere maybe? Or a building full of, I don't know, useful things? But you didn't find anything? Or see anything? Lina asked, disappointed. Nothing! There is nothing out there! His voice became a shout, and his eyes looked wilder again. Or if there is, we can never get to it. Never, not without light. He took a long, shaky breath. For a while he stared at the floor, and then he stood up. I think I'm all right now. I'll be going. With uncertain steps, he went down the path out the door. Well, said Clary, I'm sorry that happened while you were here. I was afraid you might be scared, and that's why I told you to go. But Lina was full of questions, not fear. She had heard tales of people who tried to go to the unknown regions. She had thought about it herself. In fact, she had wondered the same thing as Sage. She imagined her making her way out into the dark and coming to a wall in which she would find a door or to a tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel would be another city, the city of light that she had dreamed about. All it would take was the courage to walk away from Ember and into the darkness and then keep going. It might have been possible if you would carry a light to show you the way. But in Ember, there were no such thing as a light you could carry with you. Outside lights were affixed to poles or to the roofs of houses. Inside lights were set in the ceiling or had cords that had to be plugged in. Over the course of Ember's history, various clever people had tried to invent a movable light, but all of them had failed. One man had managed to ignite the end of a stick of wood by holding it against an electric burner on a stove. He ran across the city with the flaming stick, planning to use it to light his journey, but by the time he got to the trash heaps, his torch had gone out. Other people latched on to this idea. One woman who lived in Deadlock Street, very near the edge of the city, managed to get to the unknown region with her flaming stick. But the stick burned quickly, and before she could go far, the flame singed her hands and she threw it down. Everyone who had tried to penetrate the unknown regions had come back within a few hours. Their enterprise, a failure. Lina and Clary stood by the open door of the greenhouse and watched Sage shuffle towards the city. As he neared the trash heaps, 2 guards who had been sitting on the ground got to their feet. They walked over to Sage and each of them took hold of his arms. Uh-oh, said Clary. Those guards are always looking for trouble. But Sage hasn't broken any laws, said Lina. Doesn't matter. They need to do something. They'll get some fun out of scaring him. One of the guards was shaking a finger at Sage and saying something in a voice almost loud enough for Lina to hear. Poor man, said Clary with a sigh. He's the 4th one this year. The guards were marching Sage away now, one on either side of him. Sage looked limp and small between them. What do you think is out in the unknown regions, Clary? Clary sat down on the ground, with the light from the greenhouse casting long, thin shadows on both of them. I don't know. Nothing, I guess. And what do you think Ember And do you think Ember is the only light in a dark world? Clary sighed. I don't know, she said. She gave Lina a long look. Her eyes, Lina thought, looked a little sad. They were a deep brown, almost the color of the earth in the garden bed. Clary put the hand in her pocket and drew something out. Look, she said. In the palm of her hand was a white bean. Something in this seed knows how to make a bean plant. How does it know that? I don't know, said Lina, staring at the hard, flat bean. It knows because it has life in it, said Clary. But where does that life come from? What is life? Oh no. Lina could see that words were welling up in Clary now. Her eyes were bright and her cheeks were rosy. Take a lamp, for instance. When you plug it in, it comes alive in a way. It lights up. That's because it's connected to a wire that's connected to a generator, which is making electricity. Though don't ask me how. But a bean seed isn't connected to anything. Neither are people. We don't have plugs and wires that connect us to generators. What makes living things go is inside them somehow. Her dark eyebrows drew together over her eyes. What I mean is, she said finally, something is going on that we don't understand. They say the builders made the city, but who made the builders? Who made us? I think the answer must be somewhere outside of Ember. In the unknown regions? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. She rushed her hands together in a time to get back to work way. Clary, said Lina quickly, here's what I think. Her heart sped up. She hadn't told this to anyone before. In my mind, I see another city. Lina watched to see if Clary was going to laugh at her or smile in an over-kindly way. She didn't, so Lina went on. It isn't like Ember. It's white and gleaming, and the buildings are tall and sort of sparkle. Everything is bright, not just inside the buildings, but all around them too, even up in the sky. I know it's just my imagination, but it feels real. I think it is real. Clary said, And then she said, where would such a city be? That's what I don't know, or how to get to it. I keep thinking there's a door somewhere, maybe out in the unknown regions, a door that leads out of Ember, and then behind the door, a road. Clary just shrugged her shoulders. I don't know, she said. I have to get back to work. But here, take this. She handed Lina a bean seed and took a little pot from the shelf and scooped some dirt into it and handed the pot to Lina. Stick the bean in here and water it every day, she said. It looks like nothing, like a little white stone, but inside there is life. That must be some sort of clue, don't you think? If we can figure this out. Lina took the seed in the pot. Thank you, she said. She wanted to give Clary a hug, but didn't, in case it would embarrass her. Instead, she just said goodbye and raced back toward the city.